name's Alistair from David Lloyd Clubs. I'm here today to take you guys through some preparation workouts for your time on the slopes this winter. What you'll see from our videos today is we've got kind of where do I start workouts before we head off to holiday. We've got some further advanced workouts for you, and also some really good movement preparation, some mobility, active recovery focus days, as well as the recovery preparation at the end of your workout. And step one is for you guys to master these body weight moves only. So we're mastering the movements, we're getting the technique right, and we just need to make sure we nail that before we start adding resistance, adding further load. The warm-up sequence I'm going to take you guys through today is all about movement preparation. This is a super simple drill that you guys could do before you even go out on the slopes in the morning, as well as part of your warm-up routine in the weeks leading up to your holiday. So let's start with the first movement, okay? All we're looking for here is 10 reps, so 10 repetitions of each movement sequence. The first one I'm going to go into is a reverse lunge. When I hit the reverse lunge, all I'm going to be doing is stepping back, and whichever leg is in front, I'm just going to have a twist towards the side. This is a lovely movement for opening the hips, preparing the spine, and just getting ourselves nice and warm. So if we do this in real time, we're going to go for a reverse lunge with rotation, with twist. If we want to add something extra to this movement, we can alternate one on the left, one on the right, and then we can go for an overhead reach, which is really lovely movement to open up all of these tight tissues through the front of the body. So we can always hit our twist, twist, reach, and reach. Okay, once we've completed our 10 movement drills, the next one we're going to go to is a forward lunge. We sink into our lunge, we're going to take the right hand to the floor. The left leg's in front, the left hand is then going to reach and rotate up towards the ceiling. We step back and we repeat on the other side. So this movement again, we're still preparing the legs, but we get a lovely thoracic spine rotation on the reach and the rotation. If we feel like we're pretty mobile on this, and if we want to go a little bit deeper and open things up a little bit more, we can take that elbow all the way to the floor, right towards the big toe, before we reach and rotate. Pushing back, sinking slowly, gradually on your 10 reps, you can build the tempo, so that's the speed and the range of motion, the depth of your lunge and your reach overhead. The next one we're going to go into is a squat matrix. So the squat matrix starts us off in a narrow foot stance position. For this, we're going to sink into our squat. Second movement, we step out nice and wide, so we open the hips a little bit more. Third movement, we have a rotational squat. Really important on this movement that our knees are tracking in line with our toes and we're not caving in those knees. And we're going to repeat that sequence. One narrow, one wide, one rotational. And we're just looking for 5 of these sequences on the right leg, followed by 5 with the left. Okay, something to note on the squat if I show you from this position. So our narrow one, the angle of our shin at the bottom of this movement and our back should hopefully be fairly parallel. So we don't want to see an excessive forward lean, we don't want to be artificially upright when we hit that squat. Okay, that's your squat matrix. Next up we have push-up position. Think about that one. So from our push-up position here, we're going to basically hit one push-up. As always, your option for this is to take the knees to the floor if you need to take a little bit of load off or a little bit of resistance off. From this position, we're then going to rotate into a side plank and reach and rotate, opening up the front of the chest and the shoulder. So we have one push into that side plank position. This is a lovely movement for starting to activate our core, but then also producing a nice stretch and opening through any tight shoulders as well. So we're looking for 10 repetitions here. As an option, if you guys want to add anything else to this movement, we can always prepare the calves and get a little bit of extension through the back and also the hamstrings. So one calf at a time, I can press the heel down, the right heel down, I can then hit the push up, hit the rotation, repeat the movement. So we've got that downward dog style movement with the calf stretch, with the push up and with the rotation. 10 reps each of those movement sequences. Step 2, as you might have guessed, is to increase load. So we can start loading up with dumbbells. If you haven't got dumbbells at home, some things that might be useful, large rock in the garden, a heavy book, or even 2 litres of water sometimes can be a really useful kind of resistance tool. So the first one we're going to hit is a front squat or a body weight squat movement. So with feet roughly about hip width apart, we're going to be tucking into this squat. Imagine you've got your ski pole, so it's really looking at almost that kind of ski tuck position. When we come out of that movement, as soon as you push the floor away, we want to try and activate these glutes, okay? So your butt cheeks. So again, we want to have these rock solid by the time we get to the top, and that's so that when we hit that squat, we get full hip extension at the top. In other words, we don't leave our butt behind us, we finish with the hips here. So a big squeeze on those glutes. Again, remember the technique we talked about in the warm-up. So at the bottom of my squat, I'm pretty much 50-50 foot balance here. So I've got 50% of my weight through my toes, 50% through my heels, and I'm trying to get the back and my shin more or less parallel. Okay? As we all know, when we're out on the slopes, if we're hitting these types of movements in our skis, it's not going to be to that exact position. And our squat and our feet might look a little bit different, and our skis might be in a different position, okay? But we're gonna try and aim for that range of motion wherever possible. You guys are looking for 12 full range squats. That's our front squat. Okay, so exercise number 2. This is a core orientated movement called a Russian twist. It's a great exercise if you've got access to a stability ball. If you haven't, don't worry. I'll give you an alternative just using the floor in a minute. So what we're going to do is just walk forwards on the ball. When you lean back on the ball, we just want to make sure we've got shoulder blades and head resting. Try and keep this pelvis as still as possible. So we've got great glute activation, the hamstrings are on. We're trying to keep the spine relatively still and just keep that kind of stabilized position. The rotational element here, imagine this is your gun, and all you're going to be doing is twisting to the side and basically pointing out towards the side. At this point, again, we're just using body weight. An option in step 2 would be to add load or add resistance. So it's really easy on this position to actually rotate, and instead of keeping the hips fairly still, the hips can be twisting with you. This is what we want to try and avoid. We're trying to just maintain good stability through those glutes and through the pelvis. If you start feeling like you're coming further off the ball, we don't want to be feeling pressure on the neck here. We want to feel that most of our weight is centered down onto those shoulder blades. Get your feet nice and wide so you're super stable. Once you're happy with the movement, we can get a little bit more explosive on the twisting element of the movement. Again, we're looking for 6 on each side, so that gives you a total of 12 reps. The alternative here to the stability ball Russian twist is a seated V-sit. So totally different movement in terms of the glutes and the hamstrings, unfortunately, but we still get the spine control and we still get the abdominal focus. So this V position, if you notice my spine, hopefully staying nice and tall here. What we definitely don't want to see is any of this slumped, rounded, kind of kyphotic posture, the upper back position. So get the shoulders back, keep the chest out, stay nice and tall. Imagine someone was grabbing your head and pulling you up towards the ceiling, so lengthening your spine. Again, without weight, we can reach and rotate and tap the floor. So what we're looking to do is brace our abdominals, drawing in the belly button, keeping tension in those abdominals, and reach and rotate. So this one, quite a challenging movement, even without weight, if we do it well. If we're quite sloppy with our posture, you'll feel like you're not doing anything. So that's the important bit, keeping that spine nice and tall. So guys, remember these core exercises are crucial and sometimes overlooked with regards to ski preparation. Everyone focuses purely on the legs. What we recognise is that if we've got a stronger core, we've got a stiffer core basically and provide better support for our spine, that means we can produce more power, our limbs can produce more power, and we can decelerate and accelerate more safely. So it's crucial that we incorporate these control and these core strengthening exercises in your routine. So movement number 3, this is your Romanian deadlift. So what we're aiming for here is a single leg stance. So when I stand on this single leg, this left leg, you'll notice my knee is not locked out completely straight. So I've got a slight softness on the knee joint. It's really important that we try and balance for one, But think about the pressure through the big toe. As soon as the big toe pushes into the floor, we get a little bit of a lift through the arch of the foot, we get more stable through the ankle. We want to try and keep this glute squeezed throughout as well. So this is a hinge style movement. This is a great posterior chain exercise, really targets the hamstrings, the glutes and the back. So again, in terms of a bulletproofing exercise, a really good one for us hitting slopes. So big toe into the floor. So all I'm looking to do is hinge forward. This back leg of mine, the right leg, should stay in line with my spine. So as I fully extend and bring the hip through, and as I reach forward, as long as your balance is good, that right leg should stay in line with your spine. What you should feel here is reaching as far as you feel you can until your hamstring says, I don't want to go any further. I can feel a good stretch there, in other words. When I stand back to this upright position, I want to have this glute on. Again, I don't want to leave my backside behind me. I want full hip extension on the way through. So to start with, look for the stretch, fire the glute when we return. Little tip on this one, if I face this way, is we don't want to see this hip opening up. This is your body's way of making this exercise easier, and I've totally taken a lot of that load off the hamstring now. So if the toe starts turning out towards the side, just try and tuck the toe back towards the floor, and then off we go. We repeat that movement. If you really struggle with the balance, as you saw I did on a few of those reps, it's really not the end of the world. Holding on to something with a bit of balance will allow you to confidently get into the right position, learn the movement, feel more confident with it. Gradually over time, you can get one finger on that pole, maybe even start to let go, but you know it's there if you need to hold on to balance. Don't be too frustrated with not getting the repetitions because you're struggling with the balance. You'll find that the balance element will improve pretty quickly. It's just something that generally we don't tend to practice very much at all. Okay, movement 4. This is a renegade row. So what we're looking at here is a push and a pull exercise. This is both an anti-extension core exercise as well as an anti-rotation. So this is really testing our body's ability to resist these rotational forces. Okay, so check this out. We come down to the ground in a push-up position. So the first part of the movement is to push. If I had some dumbbells in my hand, I would be pulling the dumbbell up towards the ribs, pushing it back on the floor, and then repeating on the other side. Now, again, if we struggle with a push-up, it's not a problem. Knees can hit the floor, and then we can come back up into a full plank when we hit the row. If we really struggle again with a full plank, we can continue this position still with the knees on the floor. So if you check out the hips, what we're looking to do when we pull or we row in toward the ribs is we're trying to avoid rotation or hip piking on this movement. So in other words, my spine, if my spine was a steel rod, it's just staying in that straight line when we do the row part of the movement. Whenever you're in these push-up positions, if you check out the lower back, we never want to see this forward tilt on the pelvis. This creates a horrible shearing effect on the lumbar spine and become really uncomfortable on that lower back. If you check my glute squeeze, as soon as I squeeze the glutes and tip the pelvis back, I'm in a really nice, comfortable, flat back position. There's no tension on my back now. As soon as you start losing the squeeze on the glutes, you'll tend to start noticing that pelvis tilts forward. So make sure you're on top of that position. Push, row, row, push, row, and row. So a really challenging strength exercise, which is pretty much ticks a lot of the boxes because it's very, very demanding for our core as well. So really good challenging one. That's the renegade row. So number 5 is the lateral lunge. This is just a stepping out to the side movement. So as I step, I'm not looking to step too far. I want to be able to sit the hips back. And if you notice here, pretty much got the hip, knee, and the ankle stacked on top of each other. So the reason why we want this movement, we get to shift the hips, we start to open up the lateral part of the hip, so this glute gets a little bit more work, and we're nice and stable with those joints stacked on top of each other. What we don't really want to see is this, and the knee going too far forward and outside of the hip. We want to try and keep to this position. So we step, and we sink back almost into that seated position. So we love the lateral lunge because again, we start to load a little bit more onto the individual legs, which again can happen quite a lot when we're out on the slope. And we get to open the hip in that kind of lateral movement. From a flexibility point of view, we're also challenging the groin, the adductor on the stiff leg, the leg that stays behind. So on this one, we're looking for our 12 reps. You can do this as a 6 on the right and as a 6 on the left. If I show you from this angle, hopefully, angle of the back, angle of the shin ends up fairly similar at the bottom of that movement. That's our lateral lunge. Okay guys, so the Russian twist with resistance, with extra load. Again, if you've got access to a medicine ball or even a football, something that you've got to be able to grip hold of, obviously the heavier you've got, the more challenging the movement, particularly when it comes to decelerating that load on the way down towards the floor. So same position, hips nice and high, glutes are activated, we're trying to keep those hips still, and we're twisting, moving the ball underneath the body, trying to keep the spine and the hips as still as possible. So the rotation should, hopefully, just start to come through the upper back, so that thoracic spine. Remember, rather than twisting the hips and the lower back with that movement as well, which we don't want. So we want to try and keep those hips nice and still. If you're confident, again, remember you can add speed. So it's fast, decelerate, accelerate, and accelerate. Position-wise, again, shoulders stay on top of the ball. Make sure you don't move too far away and feel that pressure on the neck or on the head. Walk yourself back up to a seated position when you're done. Again, if you haven't got ball, stability ball, you have just yourself on the floor. Same posture cues that we talked about for that V-sit. So really nice tall spine. We're going to be, the further back you lean, this creates a more challenging effect, but it will become more challenging to maintain that lumbar position as well. Remember, we don't want to see that curved spine. So sit tall, brace your core, and remember we're looking for 1 tap towards the floor equals 1 rep. Okay, challenge is to try, twist, and rotate, but avoid that posture collapsing. Okay, so maintain that position. Okay, again, the same exercise, this time with our other heavy prop. So if you don't have the medicine ball, okay, you might not want to smash your water bottle into the floor as you reach and rotate, but just a little tap, so we make sure we get that full range of motion. Again, avoid any slouching. Look after that posture, look after your back. Okay, so here's the Romanian deadlift, the single leg Romanian deadlift with weight, with load. So we on that single leg balancing position. Remember, the right leg is going to be staying in line with my spine. Back up, full extension through that hip, squeeze that glute, and off we go again. Remember, if we really struggle with our balance, there's nothing wrong with changing hands, holding on for a bit of balance, continue that movement if you need to. Crucial bit is that we don't allow the back to bend on this movement. Imagine that spine as a steel rod, so the lower back in particular stays in line. We don't reach and rotate the hip on the other side. Okay, nice and controlled. Your other option, if you're lucky enough to have access to dumbbells, the other option with dumbbells will be your single leg Romanian deadlift. Just reaching down the leg, head up, chest up in that finish position. Remember, you're reaching just until your hamstring says, I don't want to go any further. Common faults of this movement will be, I get to here, and then a lot of people you'll see will continue, but all that movement comes from the back. We definitely do not want to see that. Make sure you stabilize and keep that back super safe all the way through the movement. Again, for your heavy water bottle, same principle. So we're reaching, working on that balance, or have the load in one hand, reaching down the leg, putting back up to that start position. So you'll really start to feel that through the hamstrings, through the glutes, through the back. Great exercise, as I said, for the posterior chain, for the back of the body. So this is the Renegade row. The Renegade row this time has resistance, we have load. Please make sure that the weight that you choose is challenging, but it needs to be doable as well. So what we're looking for is no technical failure. In other words, if your technique, your posture breaks down, then guess what? It's game over on that movement. We need to rest, recover, possibly downgrade the weight, just until it's challenging, but it's doable. Remember, the 12 reps is what we're aiming to get to. So to give you an idea, by the time you get to that 10th, that 11th and that 12th rep, it should be pretty challenging, but you're just able to hold on to the correct posture. When we go down on the floor on these dumbbells, please note that these nice round cylindrical dumbbells I have got are quite unstable on the floor. I placed these on a nice spongy mat, which gives me a lot more stability. But if you were doing this on a hard polished wooden floor, they'd probably feel very unstable. If you've got access to a nice set of hexagonal or hex dumbbells, they're really stable and they're ideal for this movement. If you need an option to make it more stable, more controllable, just take one hand on the floor permanently. So when we hit the push-up, we're then going to pull with our right hand. We swap hands and we row with the left. We can do the push-up with both hands on the floor if you prefer. And then we've got our row on left and row on right. Remember, the really challenging thing when you start to add load is for your core to not rotate and to not pike the hips up. It becomes really, really tough. So we're just looking for the knee option if you need to, but we're really looking for that nice squeeze, the retraction on the back of the shoulder blade. So we're really working, pushing muscles, chest, shoulders, triceps, pulling muscles, back and lats, but a really challenging all-rounder really for your core muscles as well. Okay, here we have the lateral lunge, this time with weight, with load. So here all I'm doing again, remember, is stepping out to the side, not too wide, stacking the hip, knee and the ankle, and then I'm hinging forward, but my back stays nice and flat. And I'm stepping back and I'm repeating. So the 6 reps on the right side. Notice the weight, I'm reaching almost to the inside of the ankle. And once I've completed those 6 reps, I'll go into the left side. So remember, the challenge here is to stack the stepping leg to open up a good stretch on the remaining leg. Please make sure when you execute the movement that your lower back and the whole of your spine stays nice and stable. So there's a hinge forward, but there's no rounding and there's no hunching on that back. If you have a dumbbell for the lateral lunge, same hand position like so. So gripping the top of the dumbbell, and then we step and we sink. So remember, on this one, we step, push the hips back almost as if that bum's sitting down on a seat, hinging forward, but not going too deep if it means your back has to change its position. And remember, on this, 6 on the right, followed by 6 on the left. If you get to the end of that 6th rep and it still doesn't feel very challenging, guess what? You might need to upgrade your weight. So I hope that you find this workout helpful and maybe even fun. But if you like the idea of exercising in a group training environment, come and visit us at David Lloyd Clubs. Have a look at davidlloyd.co.uk. We offer a Synergy SnowFit workout, also a family Synergy SnowFit workout.